this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. All change. All change. And it's purely a coincidence that it's the 1st of October. That is irrelevant. I always go by the weather and things that are going on. And the things that are going on yesterday included the heating. I was been freezing in the house. I mean, a lot of that is because this door opens up as it starts to get light to reduce the humidity down from the overnight sort of levels. And of course, because we've been getting colder nights, the temperature has actually been going down to the level of the thermostat, and the heater's been popping on now and again in here overnight just to keep it at that 17-18 degrees. So we're back to heating up the van der water before we throw things in there, because that's going to be at least as low as the temperature in here, which is quite low, 17-18. So it's a little bit of a root shock to dump them in there. Because the problem is the air temperature rises as the day goes on, and the water takes an awful lot longer to rise. So the water's at quite a few degrees below the air temperature, which would be the temperature of the roots. So that's the 2 Vanders and the 3 Rhinantheras that actually get dunked in there. Plus, when the weather's reasonable, that mounted Phalaenopsis, that also gets thrown in there to give it a good hydration. So this would do much better in the house, but it wouldn't. It would do much better in the house if it was in a pot, but not on a mount. It would dry far too much in the drier air in the house with all of those aerial roots. So that would be too much for it. So that has been out here for some considerable time and has always put up with the winter, with the lower temperatures of the winter nights. It manages. I don't say it thrives, it manages. And that's what it's going to get, because basically I'm not redoing it. So that's that. Temperatures. And I would suggest if your temperatures are starting to reduce down and you compensate with heaters and thermostats and stuff, if you haven't already done so, now is a good time to make sure they all work, rather than the first frosty night you get and find they don't. So yeah, it's a good time to check your stuff over. Check that your electrical sockets are viable, they're actually working, you haven't blown a fuse anywhere or anything, and that your actual electrical units actually work and do the job they're supposed to, not just come on and the pretty lights flash. They actually do what they're supposed to do. So a thermostat does actually kick on and off at an appropriate temperature, all those sorts of things. Give them a go. And the other thing I might try this year, because I've got something to try it with, my 3 indoor Phalaenopsis, part of the store-bought Phalaenopsis, which this one's included now, but I'm not included that in this little trial. It is said by many that these store-bought hybrid type Phalaenopsis are induced into spike by lower autumn temperatures. Well, let's give it a try then. So overnight, when I go to bed, I'm going to take these 3 out here, and then in the morning bring them back into the house. That way the differential between the day and the night will be quite a bit greater, because it stays relatively constant in the house. It only changes a couple of degrees, and once it starts changing a bit more than that, the bit that will change will be the lower end, and the lower end in the house will be compensated by the heater coming on, or heating coming on. So yeah, I think we'll try those, cooling those down at night and giving them a bigger drop at night, and see if we get some spikes. Make sure they're well fed, and have got the energy to do so. It's a bit different when you're talking about the monopodial types. They have a collective energy in the whole plant, and it doesn't last long because they have no storage organs. So they tend to get through their energy levels relatively quickly, which is why they're classed as higher feeders, because they need constantly topping up with nutrients. Whereas something like an Oncidium or a Cattleya or some of the Dendrobiums, they've got big storage organs, either bulbs or canes, and they can hold an awful lot and do without for a lot longer. But your Phalaenopsis and the like, Bandaceous types, things like that, they don't store, so you've got to keep topping them up. If they're growing, obviously. Yeah, so I think we'll try that. Other things I'm changing, when I mix up some feed in here, I'm warming that up too. So all this is my water containers with hot water in, just straight out the tap. But obviously it doesn't go in the water, it just provides the heat. So I heat the bucket up and heat that up. That's going on my mounts in a minute. They've gone 4 days without a sign of any water out here, the mounts. Are they all suffering? No. Why not? Because I had no heat during the day. And the temperatures are dropping down at night. They're not using up the water at the same sort of rate as they do back in the heat of summer. But even in the summer, I've gone every 2 days this year. It's very rare they've had water every single day. I'll show you this. First of all, we'll show you the label that says Zygopetalum, and in brackets it should say not dead yet, because it isn't. This is the one I specifically bought at Burnham's to try and grow another Zygopetalum and make sure it wasn't just luck with the last one. Now this wasn't a brilliant plant, so that was a good one to sort of try out. You know, it's gone in the cocoa husk, gently, carefully. We got some signs of some new roots growing from this new growth, and this new growth has promptly put out 2 spikes. And it just always looks odd to me when they do this, because this to me looks like a really weak growth to be allowing to bloom. But they bloom when the growth's only half size, so it is natural. But yeah, this is the one that has the sort of bluey tinge to it. Well, not real blue, but doesn't have the nice deep patterning on it. It was the one that I wasn't that keen on the blooms. I'll do a pop-up. But nonetheless, it was, as I said, I had to come away from Burnham's with something because it would have been rude not to. And I thought, well, that's not a brilliant looking plant, and I'm not that keen on the blooms. But it will be another zygo, you know, to enable me to try repotting and make sure I don't lose the old roots and everything, get some new roots going, try some new growths and see if I can get it going, which it is, as I say. So that's nice. We like it when there's a plus. The other one over here is doing really well. You know, that's a nice sort of strong plant, that one. That was the replacement, that was the Louisendorf. That's got a nice new growth coming around there. Nice big plump bulbs, reasonable root system. Happy plant at the moment. It's losing a leaf over here, but this is a very old bulb, this little one here. So I'm not particularly worried about that. And the other zygo we saw in part 4, because that's one of the project orchids. And we saw the Pabstia, like a cousin, a relative, but not a direct zygo as such. So yeah, so that's 3 zygos I've got, and they all seem to be, well, they're growing. That's the main thing. They're not dead, and they don't appear to be dying either. Some of the others I had, they took quite a long time to finally turn their toes up. And the Pabstia, the relative, they'll seem to be doing okay. We're doing okay with those at the moment, so good stuff. What else? Wasn't much else. This is looking good. The Victoria Regina cluster fully opened now, and that's a good cluster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blooms on that cluster. That's quite nice. And then the other smaller cluster up there, I think it's just going to have 2. That's just opening as well, but it makes this one look bigger because they're close together. Contrived close together. They've been tied. And my cane, this is the height of the plant. Generally speaking, you know, these were all the canes I got from Sarah. They're all roughly the same height. So what's my cane doing? My cane's up there. It's nearly twice as long. Well, that's twice as more places for buds to come out. Talking of buds coming out, there's something coming out there as well. And that is actually on the leaved cane. That doesn't look like a cluster of buds to me. That might be a kiki. That'd be good. I'll just start a new plant in the pot. Get a bigger, you know, more canes coming up. Or somebody else perhaps. The Vanda's looking good up there through the jungle. Still not fully open, but looking good. Nice plant, that one. I'm seriously thinking I might try and take that to the show on Saturday. The reason is I don't know what sort of vandas will be there, but I do know there's a couple of good growers that do grow vandas, so there might be some competition there. But the one vanda I know won't be there is Nick's cerulean with the 2 spikes. So I haven't got to compete with that one. That is just a pig of a plant to transport. That's the only problem with it. I've got a tall stand to hang it on, and it doesn't need dressing. It doesn't even need getting ready. It just needs getting there in one piece without knocking any buds off, or blooms even worse. So I think we might try taking that. I'm not going to take that because on a Victoria Regina, only 2 clusters out at the same time is not that good at blooming. And after all, we are talking about a show. So this one should be able to go. It's going to take a bit of faffing around trying to get it in a way where it can be displayed okay. Because I mean, all these fading old little seedling bits, they'll all have to be trimmed off. Some of the cabling that holds it on, fishing line's gone. So it'll probably need redressing. It'll probably need tying on again, if you see what I mean. A little more compact and slightly raised with a little bit more moss around these bare roots, just to make it look a bit prettier. So that will definitely go on Saturday. That's not tomorrow, that's a week tomorrow. The poor old Miltonias, they're going to be gone by then, unfortunately. But I mean, this one's got 2 firsts out of this blooming, one at the society tables and one at the show. So I mean, that's done well for me. And it's still got a first at the show, even though it had dropped 6 of its blooms. And the other one, the Spectabilis based hybrid, that's not going to have enough blooms left to go. The Regnellii, this is a very good Regnellii spike. Most Regnellii spikes that I've seen on plants recently have got 3 or 4 blooms. So this one's a pretty good one, and there's 2 more up there hiding up near the ceiling. But this one's got enough blooms that it's become heavy and arched over. It's just hanging out here in my way now. And these are, this one would be a good blooming to take, but it's not a good plant. You know, it's lost its leaves on this cane that the 2 spikes are coming from. There's no leaves on there. And it's got no signs of new growths. It's not a good plant. So that, although it's a nice blooming, it's not a nice plant to back it up with. The thing is, I don't know what other dendrobiums would be there. I can't take this one. I've only had this a few weeks, so that'll have to stay home. And this show is a competitive show next Saturday. I can't remember whether they're doing a display as well, because obviously that could tuck in the display, because it doesn't matter how long you've owned them then. But, I'll have a think. I don't want to take too much, because if I'm going to take any plants at all, I can't take them to the show because I'm picking Hannah up in the morning, so I can't get there in time for the setup. So any plants that are going to go to next Saturday's show, I'm going to have to take somewhere on the Friday and actually get somebody else to take them for me. I'll be able to bring them home myself because I'll be there at the end of the show, but I won't be able to get there in time on the day. You know, I can't get up to Hannah's and across, you know, to where the show is in that sort of time. I'm not blinking driving at 5 o'clock in the morning or silly things like that. So that'll have to wait. But I can run my plants to somebody else to set up for me. They'd be quite happy to do that, which is a faff. It's a faff, basically. And it'll also mean I'll need to top up my fuel as well, which I'm going to have to do at some point anyway. But I'm not one of the silly ones that's thinking, I need fuel in a week's time, I'd better queue up and get it now, because that would just be very silly, wouldn't it? It's about as dumb as you can flipping get. I've got over half a tank at the moment. I have enough to get me until next Friday when I need to take my plants somewhere, and I have enough for that trip. And during that trip, I'll get some more fuel ready for Saturday. And by then, all this faffing around will be over, so I won't need to worry. So I'm not worrying now because I know there's no point. It'll all be over and done with by then. I think it's almost over and done with now. It's only big cities and places like that are having trouble apparently, but you know, in an area like this, Bournemouth and Poole, if I went out now I could find fuel, and if I had to queue a little bit it wouldn't be for long. I have got a choice of quite a few garages around here, so you know. Right, I'll leave it at that for today. Oh, and now the sun's come out. Make your mind up. It was chucking it down when I got up. It actually woke me up early. You know, the actual rain hammering down woke me up. But yeah, there's definitely some changes on the go as far as watering frequencies, making sure my water is up to a reasonable temperature before I tip it all over roots, all that sort of stuff. And as I said, I'm already seeing the heater kick on. It's not kicking on at night as such, it's in the small hours. When it gets to sort of 3-4 o'clock, when the temperature outside is dropping down to its lowest point. And also the days are getting really short at the moment. It's really noticeable now, especially as we're having dull days. You know, so there's no nice sunset to watch, it's just dull and then it's dark. Same in the morning, it's dull and then it's a bit lighter. Anyway, keep your eye on your equipment if you're relying on that. You know, if you're in your home, then your plants will go along with whatever you do there. But again, you know, it is quite a dramatic change for your orchids when the central heating starts kicking in. You know, first thing in the morning, so that it's nice and cosy when you get out of bed. You know, you're warming your plants up when it's still night time for them. That's not quite how they work, but they'll have to put up with it, obviously. But you know, your air will dry out relatively quickly once you start with the old central heating. Your air starts drying off, so it helps if you can add a little bit of humidity into the air. Just help them out a bit. So anyway, I've got some watering to do. Got some computer stuff to do, reluctantly, but I'll sit down and do a bit. I'm not doing a lot today. And yeah, I was thinking about my black hair type dendrobiums that they've all well, actually I think they've all got scale. And it's very difficult to shift because the systemics encourage them to drop their leaves when they're not ready to. So they don't like systemics on them. So they have become a nuisance. But the one that seems to be growing pretty well and producing some better roots than the others is the one that's on a mount. But that's not a big one. Whereas, you know, I mean, that one sticking up there is what I would call a tall. That is a tall plant. That's a black hair type. I doubt if that would lend itself to a mount very well, because I'd have to mount it hanging down, and then the next growths would grow upwards. And if they grow to that size, I've then got a plant that's double the size it was before, because you've got a long cane hanging down and another one the same length sticking straight up. So this just wouldn't work very well. Yeah, I mean, they just grow large, some of them, so you know, a bit of a nuisance. So anyway, I don't think I can mount them, even though the one that seems to be doing the best is the mounted one. So I'm just having a look over here. Oh, it's just the light. I was just going to say, don't say all those leaves are going to drop. It hasn't got that cold overnight. And that Vanda has always done okay in the winter. And it even survived okay when I used to take the nighttime temperatures down to 13, 14, which I don't do anymore. We're going down to 16 this year, so it'll drop to 15 and then come back up to 16. That's what my winter temperatures will be. That's cold enough for the dendrobiums to work, the resting types, they did last year, and not too cold that things die. You know, the warmer up the warmer end, they don't die, they just slow down and in some cases stop. And I can put up with that so that I can have the mixed collection with the variable temperatures. So we'll run along with that, I think. And yeah, I was looking at Insa running around like a kid in a sweetie shop. The place where he goes to get his orchids is incredibly well stocked for the type of place it is. You know, the variety is pretty good stuff there. and the prices aren't ridiculous, you know. Prices there were quite a bit cheaper than, say, Burnham's would be. Although, you know, I could go to some of the DIY type places and probably find a few cheaper, but I wouldn't find that variety. In those sort of places, you get Phalaenopsis in the main and a few intergenerics and a few Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums. That's normally your lot. And then at certain times of year, you'll get some nobly types. You don't get much else, you know. So, yeah, some good choices, some good stuff. A lot of no ID stuff, but that's how it goes, you know. I mean, I go to Burnham's, and in their sales area, the stuff that they've mainly bought in to sell on, they're no IDs. You know, they're Cambria and houseplant, things like that. Yeah, but the Reginellii is looking nice at the moment. That's the one that's sort of hanging on to its blooms. Whereas these are starting to fade a bit now. I mean, this one's going, that one's on its way. That one's going, so that spike will be gone soon. You can see the yellowing of the whole spike, and the blooms follow on very quickly afterwards. So all this nice purple stuff here is going to be gone soon. But it's, you know, you have to sort of think, well, it was a good show. They put on a good show. They grew good growths, and I mean, this purple one here, this has started its new growth already. And all the growths with the blooms on will start a new growth soon, and they'll push on and they'll do it all again next year. And luckily with these two big ones, they haven't got to be repotted. They're in pretty good media, it's not old and tired, and there's room for them to grow the next set of growths. So they should be able to push on quite nicely and do it all again next year, which is what we like. And it should be twinkle time soon. I'm surprised I haven't seen any spikes, but I did look last time I watered. And I'll look again today. Bound to get some twinkle spikes soon. Yeah, so that'll do for today. Just a sort of quick look round at what's going on and a chat about the changing. You know, this time of year, it's just it. And in a week or two, depending on how this weather progresses, because at the moment we're in for a lot of unsettled weather with some pretty heavy rain at times, when the odd sunny patch, so just unsettled weather. But if it carries on a bit like this and the temperatures stay low, we'll be looking at first layer of shade netting off the roof. That's the green stuff. It's just a couple of screws holding that on. That leaves the silver stripy stuff up there for now. And we'll probably be taking one of the ends off, probably this one, because that sun's right down behind that tree now. By the time it comes out, it's getting weak. So we can take one layer off here as well, just leaving the silver stripy stuff. I forget which way round that is. It might be the other way round, I can't remember. But eventually all the shade netting will be off except for one layer on this side. That's all I keep on through the depths of winter. Days are so short and the sun is so weak, but this is where the stuff that doesn't really want direct sun on it through the glass is, on this side mainly, lower down. I might actually do a half and half this year and actually drop the shade netting down halfway, so that I've got bare glass here, just the polycarbonate on the roof, and bare glass down to halfway, and just the lower half with shade netting still on it. And then I can adjust a few of the plants so that these on the top shelf still get much better light. As I said, once you get into December, the sun's so weak it really doesn't matter if it comes straight in through the glass. Seems to get an extra little bit of filtering because it's double glazed. I mean, I don't know whether that's true or not, but you know, it's obviously having to get through 2 layers of glass, not just one. So I don't think it's quite as strong when it comes out the other side. So yeah, we're starting to think about the changes. As I say, it's temperature and weather driven, not date on a calendar. Just this year it coincidentally happens to be the 1st of October. Oh, God. So that year, I don't know whether that year went quickly or slowly as a growing season, because this is it now. You know, through October the growing season really is finishing off. You know, canes should be maturing, bulbs should be maturing, unless it's the type of plant that's still growing on into the winter, in which case, you know, you keep it going. Don't force things to stop growing just because the calendar says so. Just look at the plants. If your plants are growing, then try and keep them growing. Don't force them to stop. So, anyway, I will see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.